Daredevil Born Again is a very disrespectful and disappointing sequel to the original Daredevil Netflix series, which by the way is a show I absolutely love, making Born Again that much more infuriating to watch. And there are three main reasons why. Prioritization of visuals over storytelling, character assassinations, and conflict repetition. I found that these 3 points are what mainly contribute to this show's failure. I'll explain these in order of least to most detrimental. When the first season of this show was announced, I was definitely skeptical, but I'd still had a lot of hope, especially after seeing Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock in No Way Home, but it was slightly ruined by his appearance in She-Hulk. But from the start, I knew this show could never be on par with the original Daredevil, but I did have a lot of hope that this show could deliver something cool. This show tries to hook the audience through its visuals and action sequences more than its story and plot. And I think this was intentional because the showrunners knew that there were unavoidable issues with the plot. And these issues stem from the original development for this show. Born Again was initially supposed to be a rebooted version of the original show, and they had already started production on this rebooted version, but it would have still kept some of the same actors from the previous show playing the same role. For example, Charlie Cox as Daredevil, and Vincent D'Onofrio as Wilson Fisk. And honestly, if they had just stuck with the rebooted version and they didn't try to make it a direct sequel to Netflix's Daredevil, I wouldn't be making this video. I'm sorry for the pronunciations in advance, but Daredevil Born Again showrunner Dario Scardapane and Marvel Studios executive producer Sana Amanat said in an interview that 6 episodes were reworked and 3 episodes worth of new material had to be added. This was because they changed their minds on the reboot plan and wanted to fit the original Daredevil show into the current MCU. But here's the problem. Their reworking and reshooting only contributed to the show being inconsistent in all manner of ways. The 3 episodes worth of new content was primarily directed by Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, who had also directed parts of Loki Season 2, and it was painfully apparent that for Season 1 the newly added scenes directed by these two were the only good parts of the entire show. But having this mixture of good and mediocre sprinkled throughout Season 1 was not a pleasant watch, at least not for me. Admittedly, I did enjoy some of the action scenes and visuals, but that was not nearly enough to make up for the rest of the show's mistakes. And this was almost the same case with Season 2, even though at this point they made a decision about the direction of the show. The way that the characters from the old show are portrayed in this show is honestly criminal. Especially because these are established characters with so much depth and potential for more development that could have been built from their Netflix counterparts. But instead we got completely new versions of these characters, and these new versions pale in comparison to the old. The changes for Matt Murdock, Karen Page, and maybe Frank Castle are somewhat understandable because for Matt and Karen, the death of Foggy is obviously going to have a significant impact on their characters. And for the Punisher, well, he's always been kinda crazy, so it also makes sense. But the ones I consider character assassinations are for Fisk, Vanessa, and Pointdexter. For some reason, they kind of just portray Vanessa as being stupid. That honestly is the best description I can think of for her character in this new portrayal. I say this because her actions are literally in direct conflict with what's been established from the previous show. Matt very clearly threatened Fisk that if his friends are ever targeted or hurt by Fisk in any way, then Vanessa will face jail time for her involvement in Ray Nadim's death, which Matt had evidence for. It's almost as if she forgot this very crucial event and proceeded to target Matt's best friend because she didn't want her illegal business dealings to be found out by Foggy. And what's even crazier is she hired Pointdexter to do it. And again, did she forget that Dex is literally a murdering psychopath and he tried to kill her? And also, they really failed Dex's character and potential. And the Bullseye persona feels meaningless when it could have been tackled in such an interesting way. Benjamin Pointdexter was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. His mental health issues were a big part of his character. And the old show explored his descent into madness in a believable and compelling way. But now, all of that feels like it's been thrown away. Or at least they didn't develop his character in a realistic way. And they did a lot more telling than showing. Whereas the old show mastered show don't tell for all of its characters. And his motivations felt clear and expected. But now he wants to fix his mistakes. But we don't see the careful and thought out explanation of why. We just hear him say it. Which doesn't at all feel as impactful as it could have been. I think the reason for this would primarily be because of the new cast of characters. Having added so many more new characters to follow, it's not exactly feasible to focus in depth on some other characters. This could have been fine if the newly added characters were any good themselves. But no. Every single new character feels like a plot device rather than a character with any depth at all. I didn't care about any of the new characters or their role in the story. But the biggest character assassination of all is of Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin. The difference between Fisk from Daredevil and Born Again is insane. The menace of a villain that he was is completely gone in this show. Fisk's power and dominance would be effortlessly apparent whenever he was on screen in the old show. The defining attribute of Wilson Fisk's character would be his mental prowess. The way he manipulates, deceives, and creates a sense of fear in people through his carefully planned out schemes, and how he is always 5 steps ahead of his opponents is what made the Kingpin a genuinely terrifying villain. His physical strength would never be shown or used unless absolutely necessary. He's almost always on top of everyone mentally, that he wouldn't need to use violence to get what he wants. This isn't done well in this show, if at all. They added new scenes with the old Daredevil's aesthetics and feel and tried to make it seem like the new versions of these characters are compatible and they are in direct continuation of the old show. But by doing so, they're just ruining the better series, because they significantly alter the established characters, contradicting their motives and personality. In episode 5 of Born Again, we get new scenes that are flashback sequences to the old series, and the flashbacks are either pointless or a direct contradiction of what these characters were. In one of these scenes, Fisk is considering investment in Bitcoin and asking for Wesley's input. Why? To show that he's such a smart businessman? What purpose does this conversation actually serve for the character? And they do go into talking about the art gallery that Fisk met Vanessa in, but still, it's a very pointless and forced detail to focus on. And for some reason, they switch Matt's and Foggy's characters for a really boring side plot. Foggy in the earlier seasons of Daredevil was always the money and business focused and slightly cowardly friend. And Matt was always the passion driven person who puts the needs of others before himself. But here, Matt knows that a person is afraid that they are going to die in prison. And he's the one who doesn't want to get involved because he doesn't want to help a criminal. And Foggy is the one who wants to help. And I'm supposed to believe that this is the same Matt Murdock that believes in second chances and believes that anyone can change. So much so that he was defending the Punisher. This show was unnecessary because it didn't do anything new with the Daredevil story that hadn't already been done in the previous series. It was a repeated version of season 3 of Netflix's Daredevil, and that was really the extent of it. The conflict for this series and the last is exactly the same. Fisk gains power and he manipulates and controls a law enforcement agency to do his bidding. With his power and influence, he targets Matt and his friends, and they have to go into hiding. So now the protagonists have to find a way to beat him through lawful means because killing him is not the answer. And now I'm going to be a broken record and say the other show did it better. From the beginning, the biggest thing that annoys me is Fisk being mayor after the events of the last show. How did they expect us to buy that he could become mayor after all of the crazy things that he was charged with?
I beat you! I beat you!
And the worst part of it is this scene and this line are just completely ruined with this show's mere existence. If the city beat him, then why and how did they accept him as mayor? And why did the city and Daredevil have to beat him again? And if the actual explanation for this is the blip, then that is the laziest piece of writing that they could pull. The finale of this season ends with Fisk physically being beaten by the people of New York and Daredevil. And now I ask, is this the point of the show? They didn't like that the Netflix series only showed Matt physically beating Fisk. They wanted the entire city to violently beat him. And by the way, I'm saying physically because that's the only difference. The city and the people did reject Fisk in the old show, and it was an important theme throughout. That's why the last episode from the old show is so much more satisfying, and his defeat feels earned. Also, another thing that annoys me from the last episode is Matt revealing his Daredevil identity. Fisk threatened to reveal Matt's identity in the previous show, and Matt threatened him back, but now he's revealing it himself. This could have been more believable if they had taken their time in developing this narrative, but it felt rushed. I'm sure they could have done something else to have Karen freed, but I guess they really wanted to do it for the shock value and nothing more. My point is, this show sucked, and I didn't enjoy watching it. It was boring for the most part, it felt like it lacked any sense of gravity or genuine stakes, and it was nowhere close to the original series in terms of quality, even though the original series had a much smaller budget. But apparently a lot of people liked it, I think. But you guys tell me your thoughts. Daredevil Born Again? More like Daredevil probably shouldn't have been done again. Yeah, I'm sorry about that joke.